Back then, when I was so poor, I had to fill out surveys on the street to get free condoms. He said the taxi he drove was for our future. I got pregnant and wanted to surprise him. But I saw him stepping out of a Maybach. I took the pregnancy test, ran away in the middle of the night, and raised the child alone. 7 years later, he showed up with his wife and child, trying to take my son with a lawyer's letter. Ha, back then you lied to me about your true feelings. And now you want to take my child? I'll fight this battle to the end. No one is taking my son away from me. During the hardest year, when Gu and I were still in love, we could only fill out surveys on the street to get free protection. Although he always checked carefully after each time, we still ended up in trouble. When I was about to tell him, I found out that when he said he worked late driving a taxi, he was actually driving a Maybach. I threw the pregnancy test sticks into the trash. Back at the rented room, I took all the valuable things and left. We didn't meet again until 7 years later. He came to Qingfeng town for a trip with his wife and child. It happened to rain heavily, and they came into my small store to buy an umbrella. After a brief awkward moment, Gu saw the little boy behind me, doing his homework, and asked, "Is this your child?" I hesitated for a moment, then replied, "No, he's the neighbor's child. I'm just helping him with his homework." He stared at the child, who looked so much like him, for a long time. I was so nervous, my palms sweating. When we parted, he suddenly said, "Sha Meng, if you have any problems, just tell me." I smiled but didn't answer. I got through the hardest 2 years alone. What's the point of talking about it now? Summer rains come without warning. I was busy sorting merchandise when the wind chimes at the door rang. A few figures, wet with rain, squeezed inside. "Boss, we need some umbrellas," a soft, gentle voice said. I looked up, said, "Okay," and froze. It was him, Gu. 7 years had passed, and he seemed the same, but also completely different. He was wearing a perfectly tailored casual outfit, his hair neatly combed. He was no longer the man I once knew, sharing a small 10-square-meter room, eating instant noodles together. Now, standing next to him was a woman. Delicate makeup, graceful, clearly living a privileged life. And beside them, a little girl in a pretty princess dress, shyly hiding behind her mother. This must be his wife, Su Wanqing, and their daughter. A family of 3, completely out of place in my small, cluttered shop. "Meng Sha?" Gu recognized me, his voice filled with surprise. I pulled a forced smile, grabbed the most expensive umbrellas from the shelf, and handed them over. "It's raining so hard, come inside and take shelter." Su Wanqing glanced at me, then smiled and said, "So you're Gu's friend. Nice to meet you." Friend, that word was so ironic. I didn't reply, turning away to wipe down the counter that had gotten wet from the rain, wanting to keep my distance from them. "Dad, that boy is doing his homework." Their little girl, Gu, pointed at the boy behind me, and my heart skipped a beat. Gu's gaze passed over me and landed on Nianin. "Is this your child?" His voice was dry as he swallowed hard. I gripped the rag in my hand tightly, forcing a smile. "No, he's the neighbor's child. I'm just watching him do his homework." Su Wanqing's gaze shifted between the few of us, and her smile faded slightly. She walked up to Gu and casually linked her arm with his. But Gu's eyes stayed fixed on Nianin, unable to move away. At that moment, Nianin looked up and sweetly called out to me, "Mom, I don't understand this question." My mind went blank, and my heart pounded loudly. I didn't even notice when the rain stopped. Su Wanqing paid, then gently touched Gu's arm. "Gu, we should go." Only then did he snap out of it, giving me one last deep look. When they reached the door, he suddenly stopped, turned back, and said, "Meng Sha, if you have any trouble, tell me." I just smiled and didn't answer. The hardest years, I carried the pregnancy on my own, moved the goods by myself, went to the hospital alone in the middle of the night. Didn't I get through it all? What's the use of talking about it now? Seeing him again, the old memories that had been folded in my mind, suddenly all unfolded at once. More than 7 years ago, we were like this, squeezed into a rented room smaller than this convenience store. Back then, we were really poor. Poor enough that when we split a bowl of instant noodles, we'd argue over who would eat one more bite of noodles or sip a little more soup. I always said I wasn't hungry, watching him eat loudly, even more eagerly than I did. We were so poor that when we did that, We had to count the cost of birth control. He'd always be serious about it. Checking carefully with his phone's flashlight afterward. Worried there'd be any mistake. He said, with these conditions, we couldn't have a child, it'd be too hard. I believed him. I believed that every day, before dawn, he left for work. Returning exhausted in the middle of the night. Working for the future of the two of us. He said every time he started the car for his ride sharing, he was accelerating toward our future. I sat in the passenger seat, handing him water, listening to him brag. He'd say that once we saved enough money, we'd open our own little shop. Never again having to look at others' faces. Life was tough, no doubt, but my heart was full. Then one day, I held the pregnancy test with 2 lines. It was like a cruel joke from God. No matter how careful we were, we still got caught. But I wasn't scared at all, only filled with joy. I thought, this is our child, a gift from heaven. I hurried to the corner where he always parked, wanting to surprise him. Then I saw it. Around the corner, a Maybach. One I'd only ever seen in magazines, parked smoothly. The door opened, and a neatly dressed man stepped out. Followed by Gu Siju. He was wearing an expensive suit I'd never seen. With a smile on his face I didn't recognize, full of confidence. He got out of the car, shaking hands with someone else. The man before me was completely different from the one I knew. The one who wore a t-shirt and smelled like smoke. The world went silent. The so-called struggle, the so-called future, had all been one big carefully woven lie. I was the biggest fool of all. I don't know how I made my way back to our rented apartment. I looked at the pregnancy test with the 2 lines. Feeling a deep sense of irony, I casually threw it into the dirty trash bin in the hallway. Back in the room, I opened the wardrobe, grabbed my old suitcase. I didn't have much, just a few clothes, a few books, and within minutes I was packed. I took everything that belonged to me, not leaving a single trace behind. When I closed the door, I didn't look back. I had completely evaporated from his world. Now, I looked down at my rough hands from years of hauling goods. I forced out a smile, uglier than tears. The lie had ended 7 years ago. But this reunion made it clear to me. The real story between him and me might have only just begun. A few days later, the wind chimes at the store door rang again. I was focused on sharpening Nyan An's pencil, not looking up. Welcome, take whatever you need. The footsteps stopped in front of the counter, silent. I felt a little impatient, looked up, and the pencil sharpener in my hand fell with a loud clink. It was him, Gu Siju. This time, it was just him. He scanned the shelves, finally picking up a bottle of the most expensive imported water. This place is nice. I bent down to pick up the sharpener, brushing off the dust. A small business, just trying to make a living. The child. He placed the water bottle on the counter, the bottom of the plastic clinking against the glass. It made my heart skip a beat. Not here today? He's at school. What's his name? None of your business. The air instantly became tense. He suddenly laughed. Meng Sha, after 7 years, you still have that temper. I didn't reply. He leaned forward slightly, his body moving toward the counter. He doesn't like carrots, right? He asked, and I didn't respond. When he does his homework, he likes to bite the pen, doesn't he? I gripped the pencil in my hand tightly. I used to do that when I was a kid. His voice lowered. My mom never could scold me into stopping. And, doesn't he have a tiny mole near his left eyebrow? My heart pounded. I forced myself to stay calm and met his gaze. Mr. Gu, what do you want? If you're here as a tourist, Qingfeng Town welcomes you. If you're here to relive the past, sorry. I don't have time to entertain you. Once you're done buying, you can leave. The mask on his face completely cracked, revealing his need to control. Meng Sha, his voice turned cold. You think just because you don't say anything, I won't find out? He straightened up, leaving the almost untouched water on the counter, and turned to leave. The door chimes rang as he walked out, and his last words lingered in the air. I'll find out everything. The door closed, and the store went silent again. I felt my legs go weak, and I held onto the counter to keep from falling. The wall I'd spent 7 years building up was about to come down. Gu Siju worked fast. A few days later, a black car quietly stopped outside my shop. A man in a sharp suit got out, holding a thick leather envelope. He walked straight into the store and looked at me. Are you Ms. Meng Sha? I nodded, and he handed me the envelope. This is your letter. Please sign for it. I took it, signed, and the man turned and left. I stood there, holding the envelope, frozen for a long moment. Mom, who was that? Nyenin popped his head out from behind the shelf. Half a spicy snack still in his mouth. Someone delivering a package. I forced a smile. I took the envelope to the back room, found a pair of scissors, and carefully cut open the seal. Inside, there were a dozen A4 papers. The top page had bolded black words, lawyer's letter. I looked down, reading the dense small print. Client, Su Wanqing, the GU family. Subject, Meng Sha. My heart skipped a beat. How could it be her? Most of the legal terms in the letter were beyond me. But the words, change custody of Meng Nianin, burned into my eyes like a red-hot iron. The letter continued, after investigation, Meng Nianin, male, 7 years old. His biological father is Gu Siju, legal husband of Su Wanqing. Ms. Meng Sha is currently single, with no stable high-income job. She operates a small convenience store with poor financial status. She is unable to provide good education resources or a healthy environment for the child's growth. The GU family, in the name of securing the future of the GU bloodline, formally requests a change of custody for Meng Nianin. I held the papers tightly, my knuckles turning white from the force. The edges of the papers were crumpled from my grip. I felt the blood drain from my face. My ears ringing, unable to hear anything. I thought Gu Siju would come to question me, angry, arguing. But what I didn't expect was not a confrontation, but a judgment letter. They didn't even care to talk with me. Just notified me, you lost. This blow was worse. Sharper than the one I felt 7 years ago when I saw him get out of the Maybach. That time, I only lost love. This time, they were taking my life. The wind chime on the door suddenly rang, and I quickly looked up. Gu Siju was standing at the door, disheveled, his face pale. His eyes were filled with suppressed anger and exhaustion. He must have just gotten off a plane or finished a long meeting. He hadn't even had time to change his clothes. And his perfectly tailored suit collar was crooked. He strode in and stopped right in front of me. Meng Sha, you're really ruthless. I stared at him. At this face I had loved, hated, and thought I had completely forgotten. 7 years ago, I escaped from his world with all my might. Now, he was back, bringing the storm from his world into mine. You kept this from me for 7 years, and you plan to keep it hidden forever? You hate me so much that you won't even let me recognize my own son? I laughed, almost to the point of tears. Hate? That word is too light. I didn't say anything, I just raised my hand and used all my strength. I slapped that lawyer's letter right across his face. The paper scattered like a few white butterflies, sorrowfully fluttering to the floor. Is this your idea of compensation? I finally found my voice, but it was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. Every word felt like it was being torn from my throat. This is the result after you've figured everything out? Using your money and power. Hiring the best lawyers to take away my only support? My voice grew louder, almost turning into a shout. Gu Siju, do you think the whole world should make way for you? You already have a wife and a child. And now you want to take my son away from me. Who do you think you are? Gu Siju froze when I yelled at him, the anger on his face instantly frozen. He lowered his head, his gaze falling to the few black printed papers at his feet. He bent down and picked them up. I watched him, watched his fingers grip the paper. I watched his eyes scan from the first line to the last. The blood drained from his face inch by inch. After a long time, he finally raised his head. His voice low, full of helplessness. This wasn't me. I didn't know about this. I sneered. You didn't know? You think you can just wash your hands of this with one? I didn't know. He and Su Wanqing are married, a partnership. Part of the massive GU family. And now he's telling me he didn't know? Really? I took a step back, putting distance between us. So what now? Mr. GU, whether it's you or your esteemed wife, does it make a difference to me? The advantage of living in a small town is the sense of community. But the downside is the same. Nothing stays hidden, a whisper and it spreads like wildfire. As soon as Gu Siju walked away, the entire town's gaze on me changed. The first to react was Mrs. Lee from the tailor shop across the street. She used to greet me every day, calling across the street to chat about vegetable prices or the weather. Now, when she saw me, she quickly pulled down the roller shutter. Like I was carrying something dirty. Tourists who came to buy things started pointing at me. They lowered their voices, thinking I couldn't hear them. Did you hear about her? She was young and reckless, followed a rich man. And now she's trying to extort money with a child. She looks so innocent. But you can't judge a book by its cover. The kid definitely looks like that man. No denying it. I knew who was behind all of this. Someone like Su Wanqing wouldn't bother to come and confront me herself. She had the money, the means. All she had to do was speak. And these rumors would spread like a virus in this little town I depended on to survive. I felt like I was back to 7 years ago. That winter when everyone was pointing at me. Alone, with no way out. No, I couldn't just give up. For Nian, I had to fight back. I closed the shop door, took out my phone, and started looking for lawyers online. Qingfeng town was too small. There was no one here who could take on a case like this. I had to pin my hopes on the big law firms in the city or even the provincial capital. The first call I made, the person listened to my situation and was friendly. Said they could take the case. But when I mentioned the name Gu Siju, there was a 10-second silence on the other end of the line. Sorry, Ms. Meng. The voice on the other end suddenly became all business. We checked, and the Gu family is our legal advisor. There's a conflict of interest. We can't take this case. The second call was more direct. Sue the Gu family? Miss, I'd suggest you settle with money. You don't stand a chance. The third, fourth. I made 7 or 8 calls in a row, all with the same result. Either a direct refusal or a polite way of telling me to give up. This is the power of capital. It can build an impenetrable wall with money, leaving you unable to see even a sliver of light. The sky gradually darkened. My phone's battery drained, and it shut off automatically. I slumped back in my chair, feeling like all my strength had been sucked out of me. Tears fell, cold against the back of my hand. I covered my face, not wanting Nianen to see. But the long-suppressed frustration and fear surged like a flood, uncontrollable. Just then, a pair of small hands gently wrapped around my neck. Nianen pressed his little face against my cheek, warm and comforting. He didn't ask why I was crying. Just softly whispered in my ear, "Mom, I only want you." That simple sentence. It was like a beam of light that cut through all the darkness. I jolted and quickly hugged him tightly. Yes, even if the whole world abandoned me. As long as he's here, I can't fall. For him, I'll do anything. To hell with the Gu family, with their rumors. No one will take my son from me. I wiped my tears, stood up again. The next day, I opened the store as usual. Mrs. Lee still avoided me. And the neighbors still pointed and whispered. But somehow, things felt different. Aunt Chen from the noodle shop next door brought over a bowl of freshly made hot wontons. Shoving it into my hands without a word. You haven't had a meal today, have you? Eat up. You'll need the energy to argue. Mr. Liu, who lived at the end of the street and always bought a newspaper, left an extra 10 yuan today, pointing to Nianen. Buy some candy for the kid. Don't let those dirty words get in his ears. Even a few young tourists who came by regularly, after buying their things, told me, "Sis, you've got this." They didn't ask any questions, didn't say much. But holding that bowl of wontons, the steam made my eyes sting. I wasn't alone after all. Life had to go on. Rumors didn't put food on the table. I washed the bowl and took it back to Aunt Chen. Then started thinking about what to stock up on for the store. Just as I was writing down soy sauce, vinegar, and iced tea on my notepad, the wind chimes rang again at the door. I automatically said, "Welcome, take whatever you need." No response. It was Gu Siju again. I heard about the lawyer's letter and the town's gossip. I put down my pen, said nothing, waiting to see what he was going to say next. That's not what I meant. He took a step forward, eager to explain. What Su Wanqing did, I had no idea. If I knew, if you knew, what would you have done? I coldly interrupted him. Would you have stopped her and taken over yourself? Would you have used a more respectable, legal way to nail me to the cross and then steal my son? He was speechless, unable to respond. I found it a little funny. 7 years, and he was still the same. When faced with something he couldn't solve, all he could do was stay silent. Gu Siju, just leave. I picked up my pen again, looking down at my notepad. I didn't want to see him anymore. Nor did I want to get his dirty water on me. Meng Sha, he called my name, his voice tinged with a hint of pleading. I didn't mean to deceive you. That sentence was like a switch, instantly igniting the fire I'd suppressed for 7 years. I slammed my notebook onto the counter and stood up. You didn't mean to deceive me? Then what were you doing? Tell me, Gu Siju, when you saw me haggling over a few dollars for vegetables. What were you thinking? Did you think it was funny? A sense of accomplishment? No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't. He finally broke down. his voice rising. I really wanted to be with you back then. I was tired of everything at home. The fake socializing. The relationships based on money. I just wanted someone who would be with me not because of who I was. Or how much money I had. He said he had planned to tell me everything when he had a stable footing in the family business. But he kept delaying. Afraid. Weak. Not knowing how to start. I listened to his sincerity. His pain. And all I felt was absurd. So, your break was my whole life? I pointed to my chest, asking him, word by word. Your so-called sincerity was making me use free protection with you? Ju, you're so generous. Mentioning this detail, his face instantly drained of color. As if he had been slapped hard. He stumbled back a step, leaning against the shelf. His tall body shaking. Yes, he finally remembered. The so-called pure love he had was built on what foundation? It was a play I performed with all my youth and dignity. He looked at me, the bloodshot eyes growing heavier. Finally, he muttered, I'm sorry. It was like he was apologizing to me, but also to himself. I destroyed everything, 7 years ago, and now. Everything started with me. He finally admitted it. But what good is this late confession? The tragedy was already set. And my life had long been destroyed by his laughable cowardice. Ju left. I had no time to taste the flavor of this delayed confession. Life had to go on. The lawsuit still had to be fought. Aunt Chen and the others were right. I couldn't just lie down. The third day, I contacted a few lawyers again, one by one. At first, everything went well, but once they heard it was the Gu family. Silence on the other end, followed by various polite refusals. Sorry, Ms. Meng. Our firm is fully booked for cases right now. This case, it's a bit difficult. We can't take it. Just when I was about to give up, the delivery boy, Ming, scratched his head and said, Sis, how about, you ask my sister? She just got her law degree and is interning at a small firm in the city. Not well known, but her fees are cheap. A last-ditch effort. I dialed Ming's sister's number. Her name was Lin Wei, and her voice was young but very steady. I briefly explained the situation. And there was a pause on the other end. I thought it was over. But then she said, Ms. Meng, don't worry. We can't compete with them in money. But we have something they can't buy. What? Emotion. Lin Wei's voice was clear. Law is all about relationships. The life you've had with your child for the past 7 years is your strongest weapon. It was like someone had slapped me awake. Yes. Why should I fight on their preset battlefield? A battle I can't win? I hung up the phone, closed the shop door, and went back upstairs to my little room. I dragged out a dusty cardboard box from under the bed. It was my treasure chest. I opened the box, and inside, there was no gold or jewels. Just a pile of things that were worthless to others. A stack of yellowed photos. Most of them were taken with the cheapest disposable cameras, some even blurry. In the photos, Nianen went from a wrinkled little baby, to a mischievous toddler who would grin at me showing his teeth. Then, to a little kid with a small backpack. The background was always either this tiny rented apartment or the little river by the town that we walked by 1,000 times. I flipped through a photo, one from Nianen's 3rd birthday. I didn't have money for a big cake. So I steamed him an egg cake in the rice cooker. I wrote, Happy Birthday, on top with ketchup, all crooked. In the photo, he had yellow cake all over his face, grinning with his eyes squinted into slits. There was also a stack of drawings. They were all made by Nianen in kindergarten and elementary school. He wasn't very good at drawing. The sun was always missing a corner. And the stick figures were just like matchsticks. But almost every drawing had 2 people holding hands. One big and one small. Next to it, in pinyin, it said, Mama Huo, Mom and me. I carefully kept all his notebooks, certificates, and even the first baby tooth he lost. These were my entire belongings. In the past, when I looked at these things, they reminded me of those hard and tiring days. And I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. But today, after that call from Lin Wei, when I looked at them again, I felt a power inside me I had never felt before. These aren't proof of poverty. They're proof of how my son and I have survived. Clinging to each other, second by second. They are the 7 years that no amount of money from Gu Siju or Su Wanqing could ever buy. I laid out the photos and drawings. One by one, carefully on the bed. They pieced together the only complete and precious things in my shattered life. I picked up my phone and sent Lin Wei a message. Lawyer Lin, I think I found our weapon. The next few days were calm. Su Wanqing didn't send anyone over. And Gu Siju didn't show up either. I opened the shop as usual, sold goods, and at night, I'd close the door and spend time with Nianin. We sorted through our belongings from these 7 years, organizing everything into categories. The faded photos, the childish doodles, the notebooks with 100s written on them. I carefully smoothed each one and placed them into file folders. These things were my strength. Then, 3 days before the trial, Gu Siju came. He looked different, like he had lost a bit of himself. The dark circles under his eyes were as deep as ink that wouldn't fade. He pulled out a thick brown paper bag from his briefcase and placed it on the counter. "What's this?" I asked. "Take a look for yourself." He pushed the paper bag toward me. I hesitated for a moment, but I still reached out and opened it. Inside were several neatly bound documents. I pulled out the top one. The bold title read, "Statement of Withdrawal of Custody Rights." I flipped through the pages, my fingers trembling. It was clearly written in precise legal terms. He, Gu Siju, voluntarily, permanently, and unconditionally gives up all rights and claims to the custody of Meng Nianin. The last page was signed by him in a flamboyant script, with today's date. My heart raced. I looked up at him, and he avoided my gaze. He pulled another document from the paper bag. "This is for Nianin." He unfolded the document. It was a growth fund. "I've already deposited the first amount. And I'll continue adding money regularly every year. The fund manager is only you. You decide how and when to use it. There are no conditions, and no one can interfere." I looked at the astronomical amount on the document and suddenly felt like laughing. Is this the way rich people solve problems? First, they throw money to crush, then to take. And now, they use money to make it right. What about Su Wanqing? I asked suddenly. Did she agree to this? Gu Siju's shoulders slumped, like a mountain losing its backbone. He lowered his head, his voice barely audible. "She and I are in the process of getting a divorce." He paused before adding, "I've already had the lawyer withdraw from the case. She won't disturb you anymore." I held those papers in my hand, feeling like they weighed a ton. Did he surrender? Why? I couldn't help but ask. Finally, he lifted his head and looked me in the eye. This time, he didn't look away. His eyes were red, bloodshot. "Meng Sha, I was wrong," he said. "I was wrong from the moment I started 7 years ago. I thought I could control everything. But I ended up ruining everything, hurting everyone. I don't deserve to be his father. And I don't deserve to drag you into this mess." He took a deep breath, his posture extremely low, almost to the ground. "I only have one request." He looked at me. Can I see him sometimes? Whenever. However, it's up to you. If you say no, I'll never show up again." The small shop was eerily quiet, except for the hum of the old fridge on the wall. I folded the Statement of Withdrawal of Custody Rights neatly and placed it back in the paper bag. Then, I took out the document about the growth fund. "I'll accept the fund." My voice was calm. "It's for Nianin. I thank you on his behalf." I paused, then pushed the paper bag with the statement back toward him. "This, and you, I don't need." Gu Siju's body trembled violently. He looked at me in disbelief. I walked around the counter and opened the shop door. The weather outside was nice. "Let's go for a walk," I said. "There are some things I want to say to you once and for all." Qingfeng town wasn't big, and after passing through 2 alleys, we reached the creek. The water wasn't deep, clear and transparent, with round pebbles at the bottom. A few kids were playing in the water downstream, their laughter carried by the breeze. We walked like that, one in front, one behind, without saying a word. Finally, I stopped by a large stone. Gu Siju. I turned around and looked at him seriously. "You don't have to feel sorry for me, really." He froze. I smiled, a light and genuine smile. 7 years ago, I held a pregnancy test and was about to find you. But at the street corner, I saw you get out of a Maybach. That's when I realized, you and we weren't from the same world. Did I hate you back then? Yes. I hated you so much I wanted to stab you. But more than that, I was sober. I went back to that little rental apartment. Threw away everything you had given me, even the pregnancy test. I told myself, Meng Sha, from today, this person has nothing to do with you. The child in your stomach has nothing to do with him. It's yours. I pointed to my chest. It took me 7 years to bury that person who once relied on you. And then, from the rubble, I built this home, apported myself, and raised Nianin. Was it hard? Incredibly hard. So hard that a few times, I thought about jumping off the bridge with my child. But I made it through. I looked at him, my gaze clear and firm, like the water in front of me. You see, I don't need you to save me anymore. Your money, your power, your guilt. They can't save the Meng Sha who died 7 years ago, and now, I'm living just fine. He listened in silence until the end. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking violently. It was the first and last time I saw this man cry. The sun was about to set, and the golden light reflected off the water, shimmering. In the end, he left, his figure lonely, without a glance back. I stood by the creek for a long time, until the sky darkened. When I returned to the shop, the warm yellow light shone from the door. I opened the door, and the wind chimes jingled. Mom, you're back. Meng Yan'an peeked out from behind the counter, holding up a drawing he had just finished. Look, this is our family. In the drawing, a stick figure was holding hands with another smaller stick figure. Next to them was a house with a sign that said, Meng Sha's convenience store. On the roof was a huge, grinning sun. I walked over and ruffled his hair. That's a great drawing. Outside the window, the breeze gently blew, making the wind chimes at the door ring with a crisp, pleasant sound. Life had returned to its original form, ordinary, trivial, but with a warmth that brought peace to the heart. I watched my son, who was diligently doing his homework under the lamp, and a relieved smile spread across my face.